Hello everyone, we are just 2 weeks away from the second part of the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC, the Indigo Disk. With that in mind, I figured it would be a great time to start talking about some of the returning Pokemon and their potential in the competitive scene. Of course, we will be talking about potential leaks and spoilers within this video, so if that is something you are looking to avoid, you've been warned. We're just going to start things off immediately with this tier list here. We're going to jump into immediately onto Venusaur. Now, I don't think Venusaur has been historically good in VGC. It's seen its usage with the chlorophyll, so it has a niche. And I think the fact that having chlorophyll, I'm going to put it in B. I don't think Sun is going to be an amazing core moving forward. However, Venusaur always sees its usage, and it's probably going to see some usage again in Scarlet Violet. Obviously, we can now change its typing. Weather Ball is cool, right? It's got some cool tools for it, right? As well as being fast in Sun, outpacing Flutter Mane as well could be something niche as well. And into Sun, I don't know if you're actually able to get the KO, but maybe like a Terra Poison Sludge Bomb, or if you want to go physical Venusaur, I don't know. There's a lot of options there for Venusaur basically, and I think because of that, it's probably going to see some usage. I don't think it deserves higher than B tier. Blastoise saw a lot of usage in the Dynamax era, guys, and I'm going to put it in C. I do still think there's a fair bit of tools with the fake out. I do think that gives it something. And I just don't think it's going to be enough to justify using this as your water type over something like either whether it's the Urshifu or the Pokemon Primarina that we're going to talk about later, right? I just don't think there's enough to justify using it, but it might see some niche usages with the fake out. And it was just better in Dynamax with the damage after turn on its Dynamax move. But, you know, and same with Vileplume, guys. This one I'm going to put in D. Relative to the rest of the Pokemon in this list, it's just not it. I like Vileplume. I think it's a cool looking design. It's just not the Pokemon that you're going to see used too often here. I mean, not when Venusaur is usable. You know, Vileplume is like that knockoff chlorophyll user, that knockoff like poison grass type. But we've got Venusaur. Vileplume's going to get outclassed. It's just not going to happen. Dodrio, buddy, same with you. You're just not it. I'm sorry. I love your design. You are just sadly not good enough right now. I mean, maybe like Terra Flying as like Brave Bird you can send off and like get some decent damage. But once again, like I feel like that's like a very niche spot that's going to be used on like a for fun team rather than like actually having an impact on the meta. So I'm going to keep it down in D. Same with Dugong. Dugong, however, does have a little bit of an interesting option because it does get access to Perish Song. Assuming it keeps the access to Perish Song, maybe has something like Icy Wind as well still, which it probably should. I don't know why it would lose it. And maybe you see it as a niche pick. I just don't think it's going to be worth it to actually run. Once again, is it justifiable as your water type? Because I feel like the water types are super, super important when you're selecting them, because there's so many good ones, like especially with Urshifu being around, right? Like it's just so hard to not use Urshifu. Not knocking on Dugong, I just don't think it has that reason to be used instead. Okay, Executor is an interesting one because I would love to put it in D tier, but I think I'm gonna leave it in C tier, right? You get stuff like Sleep Powder, you get stuff to access to Trick Room. Now, do I think it's an amazing mon, especially in like a Flutter Mane meta or anything along the lines like that? Probably not, so it's probably staying in C tier. It's an interesting niche usage. I'm honestly going to group the other Eggy in there too. It's just, like, they're cool. They want to be used. I just don't think they have enough of a niche to actually see more than just the odd kind of team are built around them sort of thing. Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan. Get them into D tier. They're not moving from here, guys, okay? This is kind of, I hate to say it, but this is where they belong in the meta unless there's some sort of buff that they get, because right now there's not a lot going on for them, right? Like, your best thing you can do with Hitmonlee is probably like Unburden, and then you have like a Psychic Seed or something along those lines. Just doesn't feel great to me, right? I think there needs to be some sort of buff to get some of these old school Pokemon back into the metagame, right? But for right now, we don't have that. They're sticking in D tier. Lapras, guys, everybody always hypes up Lapras, and then they realize it just sucks. I'm going to leave it in C tier because I do think it's a piece people are going to try and utilize. I just don't think it's a piece that is actually going to see much usage after the initial start to the format. It was kind of like the Melodic, right? Everyone was like, oh, Melodic's amazing, and then it just kind of died off. It's still kind of slightly used, But similar with Lapras here, I think it's going to be that same concept. It's going to be like, yo, Lapras is hype. Let's use Lapras. Let's test it out. And then they're going to realize that it's just not where it needs to be in the format. But I'll leave it in C tier. And guys, Meganium has never been good. I hate to say it. If you're a Meganium believer, I'm sorry. It's going in D tier. For Alligator, see, I want for Alligator to be good, right? It has tools. I just don't think its stats can back it up. So, like, as cool as it would be to get, like, Dragon Dances off and stuff like that, I don't think it's good. I am going to leave it in D tier. And once again, guys, if you are a fan of Feraligatr and Meganium, I mean, it's just not the day for it. It's just not the right time for it, you know? I think Feraligatr could have been cool had we not had all of the, like, the legendaries in right now. Like, if this was still a regional dex format and Feraligatr was in, I think Feraligatr could see some usage. But I think given the fact that we already have stuff like the Urshifu, the Fluttermanes, the Iron Hands, you're not going to see too much of a Feraligatr. Same with Blossom, guys. I don't think I've ever seen anybody use this thing in VGC, so it's staying in D tier. Skarmory, I absolutely love this Pokemon's design-wise. I just don't think it does anything. If Corviknight is already struggling to see usage, I don't think Skarmory actually provides anything that Corviknight wouldn't. And it's just going to get outclassed by Corviknight if anybody's ever going to use the Steel Flying type. So Skarmory is going to go down here. Now, Smeargle. I'm going to put Smeargle in A. I hate this Mon with a passion, but it is going to be used. It is a Pokemon that can learn every single move. And, of course, can only use 4 of them at a time. But just the ability to learn every single move is super, super valuable. Can slot in on a bunch of teams. And I think something not a lot of people have mentioned yet. Or maybe they have. I don't know. I haven't really paid too much attention. But you now get access to stuff like Revival Blessing, which is kind of cool, right? So, like, normally it's like you're using your Smeargle as support, and then you'd want to just keep pieces alive with your Smeargle. But now you could almost say, I can almost, you know, do that, but I could protect the Smeargle, let my piece beside it die, then just revive it on the following turn, which is definitely something that I think adds that element to Smeargle. Whether or not it's going to be meta or used often, I think it's an option that people will have to consider. And just because of that, it's just got so many options. Follow Me, Spore, the Moody boosts and speed and stuff. They just get annoying. Obviously, it doesn't have that Dark Void anymore, which is very, very good. But there is still a lot of options for Smeargle, and it's going to make an impact on the metagame, and I hate to say it. Hitmontop, I'm going to keep Hitmontop a little bit higher. I don't think it does much. It is a very cool option. Fake Out, Intimidate, Wide Guard. It feels really strong. Once again, it's going to be similar to like the Lapras. I think people are going to try it out, and it's just going to get outclassed by the other Intimidators, by the other fighting types. In fact, I think I'm going to drop it down to C tier just because of that. I don't think it's going to make an impact on the meta. I wish it would, because I do love Hitmontop, but I just don't think it's going to be there. See, now Raikou is interesting. Normally, Raikou would have that niche, and normally I'd put it in B tier. But given how good Iron Hands is as an electric type, I'm going to immediately drop Raikou to C tier. It has some stats. It can do some things. I just don't think it does enough things to outclass Iron Hands. Obviously, if you want the fast electric type, it's a very cool option. It definitely works for that regard. I just don't think it outclasses Iron Hands as like I'm going to impact the meta as like one of the stronger electric types here. Now, Entei is really cool. Entei, and I'm going to talk about Entei and Suicune together. I'm going to put them both in B tier. They're kind of both they play a little bit differently, obviously. Like, I think Entei more along the lines of, like, especially with Inner Focus now, you can almost use it as, like, a fire-type Dragonite. Kind of have a bulkier... Is it bulkier than Dragonite? I actually don't know that. But, like I said, different typing Dragonite. If you didn't want to have that Dragon type and you wanted to have an Entei instead, you can go Banded, you can go E-Speed, you can set that up beside Shenpao. Stuff like that definitely gives your team options as well. And I think there's just not that many good fire types. You also have something like Sacred Fire, which is an incredible attack, 50% chance to burn if it connects 90% of the time. It's a really good option for a team. It's a really good fire type. Historically, it's seen usage in certain formats, and I think we might be able to see it creep into the format here as well. Suicune, it's just that nice passive Tailwind setter. You know, similar to how like the Roaring Moon is used right now. You know, you've got the passive Mon, you get the Tailwind setter up. You get to set Tailwind up, then you get to support your team. That's what I think Suicune's going to be used for. Again, that's what it's always been used for here. Whether or not it holds up in the current meta is a little bit up in the air. It does have a lot of really good bulk. The problem is you can outbulk the Fluttermane, but you can't damage it back. And that's, I feel like, where Suicune is going to be losing value in these formats, where it just doesn't have the damage output anymore to be justified as like that bulky that bulky Tailwind user, right? I feel like you're gonna need to get maybe a Calm Mind or something, some sort of setup off with this Suicune before it can actually do anything, which feels a little subpar to me. But anyways, moving on. Sceptile, it's D tier, guys. It's just not good. It's gonna be cool. You're gonna see a random niche person try to use. I believe it's Unburden is his hidden ability. You're gonna see someone try it. It's just not gonna be good. Same with Blaziken and Swampert. Actually, you know what? Blaziken I might move up to C tier. Now, is it worth it? Nah, I'm just gonna leave it D tier, guys. I was gonna make some cool thing. It was like with Clear Amulet, you can't get intimidated. Maybe it does something. It just doesn't. Okay, it just doesn't do anything. Same with Swampert. It's got a really cool typing. I just don't think. I think all three of these guys have just kind of been outclassed, so to speak, right? Like maybe we're gonna be wrong. Maybe I'm gonna see some usage. You know, maybe Swampert comes into the game with like Yawn. But if I'm gonna use Swampert, why not have a Gastrodon that's just going to not get hit by Surging Strikes and actually protect the rest of your team from Surging Strikes or other water moves as well, right? So once again, feel like all three of them could feel outclassed and subpar right now. Same with Flygon, guys. I'm a Flygon believer. It's just not it. It's just not a good mon. I hate to say it. Like I could go on about how like, oh, maybe it sees usage, but I don't think it does. Metagross I'm gonna put in C because people are gonna try, and Clear Body is a cool ability. Something I do want to point out is that Bullet Punch does not actually kill a decently bulky Fluttermane, and I'm not talking like ridiculously bulk. You actually like don't need that much bulk to just live a Bullet Punch from a Metagross, which kind of defeats the purpose of Metagross. Like if Metagross would be able to just sit there and just like blow back the Fluttermanes, I would say it has a little bit more usage. Obviously, it's a Metagross, Clear Body. I still think it's a good mon. I don't think it's going to impact the metagame all that much, but it's a mon. It's going to see some usage, okay? Rampardos, Bastiodon, they have never been amazing. Obviously, Rampardos has that incredible attack stat, but I don't know if it's going to do much. I just don't think either of them really add much to the metagame, so we're just going to leave them, we're going to leave them down there. Rhyperior now, Rhyperior had its time to shine in the Dynamax format. You know, it would Dynamax, it would be able to take hits so much better. It would get that weakness policy, and then it would send massive Dynamax attacks off. I don't think it can do that as effectively with this format without Dynamax. However, Solid Rock is an interesting ability with Terra, because now I can go Terra out of 4 times weaknesses and maybe just have Solid Rock on, like, you know, if I have a Water type, you know, I go Water type and I have Solid Rock now. And that's not something you normally see, and that just kind of allows you to maybe live some like wild charges. So I think with Terra, there's a little bit of a niche for that option. I don't think it's going to be very good, but I will give it C tier. Magmortar, buddy, I'm sorry. It's just never been your time, and I don't think it's your time anymore. It's just not it, guys. It's just not it. Same with, I mean, Superior is going to see some usage with like the contrary stuff. It's just, once again, I don't think it's going to make that impact. I'll leave it in C tier because you're going to see people try it. But like with Contrary Leaf Storm, people are definitely going to be trying to use it. I just don't think it ever breaks to like, oh yeah, this mon's amazing. Same with Emboar. It's going to stay down here beside his friend Magmortar. It's not going anywhere, guys. It's just chilling back here. It's not that great. Zebstrika, same. Zebstrika as a design, 100 out of 10. Zebstrika as a Pokemon, and actually being used in competitive Pokemon, not so great. Not a huge fan of it. Don't think it does much here for us or anything, honestly. Once again, Whimsicott. If you guys haven't heard the rumors on Whimsicott yet, this Pokemon is incredible. It is always one of the best support mons in the game. Once again, you can never go wrong with a Prankster Tailwind. What makes that even better is Prankster Encore. Now they try to stall out the Tailwind, they're going to protect. Next turn you go Encore, they're Encore into it. They try to fake you out, next turn you go Encore. You also have cool tools where you now get access to something like Covert Cloak on Whimsicott, which it's never had access to before, making it once again just even more likely to get that Tailwind up. Fast Prankster Tailwind with Encore feels incredible. And now even going up against like the Tornaduses, right, where you click Tailwind, they click Tailwind. Next turn you just send an Encore out. They can't stop that. They're Encored into Tailwind, and you move on. Obviously they might start running Mental Herb for scenarios like that, but Whimsicott, Prankster Tailwind, guys, is just incredibly strong. We also get to Terra out of potential Sludge Bombs and stuff like that, which feels incredible. Centino, I don't know how to pronounce this thing. Anyways, Centino, I'm going to go C tier. It's similar to the Superior, where you're going to see it get usage. I also believe it gets Technician. And the problem with Cinccino before was you couldn't use Technician and Skill Link. What is it, Skill Link? I don't know. I think it's Skill Link, right? And you get you get to hit all 5. I think that's what the ability is called. I could be wrong, but whatever the ability is that hits all 5 of your 5 hit moves, right? You can now use Technician and what's it called? Loaded Dice, which I think is actually something that may allow Cinccino to see some usage, right? Because you're going to be getting 4 or 5 hits every single time, and that's Technician boosted. So something like the Bullet Seeds that I believe were base 25 power, right? You're gonna hit that 4 times. You now have an 100 guaranteed 100, maybe a 125 power move that is just coming off of Technician too, right? Which feels incredible. So maybe there is gonna be a niche for Cinccino. I just don't think it has the rest of the stats to back it up. But maybe you can go like Terra Ghost to get around like E-Speeds and Fake Outs and just like take a few KOs. I don't think it's good enough, but you never know. Reuniclus, it's not going to be there, guys. Once again, used as a very slow Trick Room setter. Overcoat's kind of a cool ability. I believe it gets it. So maybe you can get around to Moongus that way, which you would, but I just don't think it's just not good. Honestly, I might even be like crazy when I say it gets Overcoat, so don't even quote me on that. Golurk, same thing, guys. It just doesn't do much. There's nothing here for it to actually really accomplish. There's not a whole lot for it to do. Cobalion, kind of in the same boat. I am a little bit mean to Cobalion. Obviously, it has its chances with like the whole Justified into Dynamax eras. Then you get the Steel Spikes and like the stuff like that. But going into a Terra format, I mean, it is a very good defensive Pokemon, so maybe it does jump up into C tier. Maybe I'm not giving it enough credit. But sometimes being wrong on tier lists is fun because you can look back after and go, man, was I wrong. So like maybe I'll just leave it down here for the sake of leaving it down here. Now, Terrakion normally has usage, especially like Terrakion, Whimsicott stuff. I'm going to leave it in C. I do think it's still worth it just because it has some speedier rock slides, right? Close combat is still a strong option. You also get tools like Clear Amulet now, because normally Terrakion's big thing was like it's just going to get intimidated and like it's not really that scary anymore. But with a Clear Amulet now, you could almost try and justify saying, hey, I'm not going to get hindered this time, and I'm going to still be launching big attacks off into you, especially pair that with like some Tailwind support. I could see that working out fairly well. Moving forward, Virizion, it's going right beside Cobalion, guys. It just doesn't do enough. I don't think the stat distribution is great for it. It's just kind of down there. Keldeo is not legal, so I'm just going to move it to the end of the list. Meowstic is interesting because I'm not going to tier them separately because I feel like they're both like out-of-the-box prankster users. So I'm going to leave them both in... I'm going to leave them like top of the D tier. If there was like a between a C and a D, I'd probably leave them there because you're gonna see. Oh, they are tiered separately. I do have 2 images, so I will tier them separately. Competitive, Meowstic probably staying in D tier. It's not coming out. The only thing that saves Meowstic is Prankster, and that's only on the other version of it. So we will tier that when we get to. Actually, I'll do it right now. And I'm gonna give this one low C tier. Once again, it's a niche mon. Prankster. I think you're gonna see Prankster Pokemon creep in usage. You're gonna see them, right? You still from time to time you still see Murkrow pop up, right? Do I think Murkrow is great right now? No, but once again, just Prankster Tailwind, Prankster support is incredibly strong support for your team if you can find the right niche for it. So I'm gonna leave Meowstic there. Malamar, I'm gonna leave in D tier. I don't think it does much here. It loses to Fluttermane. There's not a whole lot going on for it. Incineroar, S tier. You guys know what was happening. You guys knew Incineroar was coming up here into S tier, right? Like, you had to know. This mod has been dominant in VGC for so long. It's coming back, and honestly, I'm really happy because it just allows you to play that pivot game, and I enjoy playing that pivot game. So seeing it come back, probably access to Parting Shot, maybe it has access to Knockoff as well. That's unconfirmed, of course. But just Parting Shot, having Flare Blitz whenever you want it, Dark type coverage as well. It's a really good size spam answer because like the Armarouge doesn't really scare it. It's just a really good piece, and you're gonna see it be used. And you hate to say it, if you're not an Incineroar fan, I'm sorry, you're gonna see it. Primarina, I'm gonna give Primarina B tier. It's interesting. Once again, it's that similar concept to like the Salamence and stuff, where this thing resists both Urshifu water stabs. It actually beats both forms of Urshifu, which is really cool. So I think that's definitely something to consider. And then you get like Liquid Voice, Hyper Voice, and spread water coverage generally feels pretty good as well. Maybe you slap something like a safety goggles. You could even go Terra Grass to get around Amoonguss stuff right now. I think there's options with Primarina. I think it's a really cool Pokemon. I think the typing is really, really good. This is probably just me on like some serious copium waiting for Tapu Fini. But like, you know what? Primarina, I think there's a niche for it, and I think you're going to be able to see it. Toucannon, buddy. Not your day. You're going into D tier. Alcremie going into D tier. Duraludon, I'm going to put in C, because if I don't put it in C, people are going to yell at me because they're like, oh, Eviolite Duraludon is going to be good, Ryan. I really don't think Eviolite Duraludon is going to be good. You still need to invest too much in bulk to allow it to live certain things. And then if you invest that much in bulk, you're probably hitting like a wet pool noodle. Honestly, probably even a dry pool noodle. You're probably just not hitting anything very hard. And it's just not it. So we're going to send it down there. I don't know why Milcery is on this tier list. I'm going to put it down in the bottom here. Once again, I don't know why Beldum's here either, but we're going to put it down at the bottom. Lantern. Once again, it kind of just gets outclassed. It's a cool option because it does get like access to like Water Absorb and Volt Absorb. So it's an interesting option. I'll put it at the top of D tier, but it's not good, guys. It just doesn't have the stats to back up the cool typing. Like if it had better stats, I actually think it could be used, but I don't think it's good enough right now anymore. Granbull does get Intimidate, but I think that's where its viability ends, is with that Intimidate. So Granbull's gonna stick around in D tier. It's not going anywhere. Kingdra I'll put in C just because it's a weather abuser. I think we have better weather abusers than Kingdra, just because Kingdra's stats have always been a little subpar and lackluster. But I think we have better weather abusers than Kingdra. But once again, it's a weather abuser. It's probably going to see some sort of usage. Someone's going to try and run Kingdra at some point and maybe have a cool Kingdra team. I just don't think it gets too far. Electivire, I'm going to give it D tier. I'm going to put it beside his friend Magmortar. There's just not much going on here. It's got cool typing. Maybe it can do something with Terra. I just don't think so. Actually, can it be immune to electric moves? Because if it can be immune to electric moves, which I believe it can be, don't quote me on this. I don't know exactly what motor drive and stuff does, but could you go like Terra Water or Terra Flying and just like not care about the electric moves? Because that's kind of something that could be kind of cool. But once again, I think it's like entirely outclassed. I'm talking too much now. Porygon2 is going to be C tier. Normally, like, I feel like this mon does incredible amounts of damage. I mean, adaptability, Terra Normal is probably going to hurt. I'm actually going to put it in B. I've changed my mind. We'll talk about Porygon2 at the end since I have to add it to this tier list manually. I'll do it at the end. But Excadrill. Now, if you would have came to me and said in Regulation B and C, Excadrill was coming back, I would have said, yes, let's go. This thing's going to be A tier. This is not Regulation B or C. We're now looking at Regulation F. We have other tools that are going to deal with Excadrill. I do still think it's a cool niche mon. I'm going to leave it in B tier, especially with the ability like Sand Rush. I think it's going to have some sort of usage. I just don't think the Sand Setters are enough for it to justify an A or S tier right now. It honestly might just be a high C, but I'll leave it in B just for some diversity on my tier list. Scrafty, guys. Scrafty isn't it, especially in a Fluttermane or a Fairy coverage format. It's if I have to use my Terra on a Scrafty, it's probably not the best support. Just doesn't feel quite right, you know. Galvantula joining its buddies in D tier. It's got some cool concepts. It's just not the spider that I'm going to be talking about in this video. Araquanid, I'm going to put it in B tier. I have high hopes for Araquanid. It always seems to find a way into metagames, especially with like Trick Room. And I think if we're trying to dodge like the whole like Torn Earth stuff, right? Like Water Bubble and being able to not get burned, boosting your water damage, potentially Terra Water, and just like blowing things back in Trick Room does actually feel pretty good. I think you're probably going to see it there at some point. Comfy is interesting. I'm going to give it C just because Floral Healing is a really good ability. No, Floral Healing is the move and Triage is the ability. Yes, either way, it gets priority healing moves, which I think is really, really cool. And I think that because of that, it has a niche. Like I said, similar to like the Prankster support. This is now similar to like Prankster healing, right? And you can actually do that with like Prankster Draining Kiss back in Dynamax. Like you'd do Prankster Draining Kiss and you'd get like the priority, you get the policy proc stuff, right? Obviously, I'm going to leave it at this. I think this is cool. I don't think it comes past C tier, but... And we're going to finish with Minior. I feel like the Minior believers are going to hate me for this, but I'm going to put it in D tier, guys. This thing didn't even find usage in like the Sun and Moon era when it first came out in its regional decks. I don't think it gets anything better for having being back into format now. I mean, it's kind of a cool Pokemon. You can do some maybe fun things. I just don't think it ever has actual impact on the metagame. All right, I think anything B up on this tier list is going to actually have an impact on the metagame. You are going to see it. Oh, I never talked about Porygon2. Porygon2 I'm going to put in A tier similar to Smeargle. It's not a mon I think is going to get a lot of usage because there is a lot of high-powered Pokemon right now. But it's going to be similar to that Dusclops, right? And that Trick Room support, and then you're going to have stuff like, you, if you want to, I'm going to hate saying this, but I am going to say it's going to get Ally Switch again. So, you know, Ally Switch if you really wanted to, but I think just double stabs, maybe you can go Trace. I think Trace is a really cool ability. Maybe you can like Trace Dondozo's unaware, and then their boosts don't matter. Like, which would be incredibly cool, right? Like, there's options. You can also, which something that's really fun that I actually have tested, you can Trace Good as Gold, and Porygon2 coming back, maybe tracing Good as Gold. Now you have a support Porygon2 with the defensive stats that it has that is immune to everything that the Goldango is immune to, which kind of feels a little crazy. So Porygon2, I'm going to leave an A tier. I think there's a lot of potential for P2 to actually see some usage here. But I think that's just going to do just about it for this tier list, guys. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Feel free to yell at me. That's like the best part of making tier lists. Is like, yo, you disrespected my boy Blastoise, etc., etc. Right? And honestly, I want to engage in that conversation. So feel free to let me know down below your thoughts on the tier list. And with that, thank you all so much for watching. If you guys do enjoy this type of video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Really do appreciate it. And of course, it does help out the channel. I'm going to stop rambling now. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in a future video.